They capped an ugly wellhead on a Friday. By Wednesday, every heated driveway in Aspen Ridge was a glacier. 11 vehicles were entombed in ice, their owners unable to even open the doors.
Why is my driveway a sheet of ice? This never happened before.
Beside her, a capped geothermal wellhead sat welded shut, its pressure gauge frozen at 0. This is the story of how an HOA capped a geothermal well and froze their whole community. The man who built the system, Donald Haugen, hadn't been invited to the conversation that decided its fate. For 25 years, his closed-loop geothermal system had silently melted every driveway and sidewalk in Aspen Ridge. The school bus got stranded for 6 hours with 23 children aboard. While parents watched helplessly, the on-call ER doctor couldn't reach her vehicle, and emergency calls went unanswered. The snowmelt system's control panel showed 0 pressure. The heart of the community had stopped pumping. 1 week before the blizzard, the HOA board gathered for its final meeting of the season.
That rusted mechanical eyesore is lowering our property values. I move. We have it removed.
That wellhead powers the snowmelt for every driveway in Aspen Ridge. You cap it. You freeze the entire community.
It's an industrial relic. The county will deem it non-conforming, and then we can seal it.
Donald warned the board in writing, attaching a diagram of the closed-loop system. The county inspector's report arrived 3 days later. Wellhead found non-conforming. Ordered capped within 72 hours. Deborah made certain the inspector saw only an eyesore, not the heart of the community's heating.
They'll regret this the moment the first heavy snow hits.
Frank Eldridge, the HOA president, signed the compliance order against his better judgment. On Friday morning, the welding crew arrived. The welder lowered his mask and struck the arc, fusing steel to the well casement with deliberate finality.
About time. That industrial blight has been dragging down curb appeal for years.
From 100 yards away, Donald watched through the bare winter branches, unmoving. Deborah snapped a photo and sent it to the board, captioning it "Aesthetic Compliance Achieved." By noon, the geothermal loop registered 0 flow. The heart of the system was silent.
Now this neighborhood finally looks like the luxury enclave it was meant to be.
It's capped. Have the emergency provisions ready. They'll need them sooner than they think.
He hung up, his expression unreadable, and placed a call to his attorney. Deborah drove home, utterly convinced she had saved the community from an eyesore. The long-range weather models showed a pressure system building over Alaska, but no alarms had been raised yet. By Monday afternoon, the National Weather Service upgraded the system to a winter storm warning. Projected snowfall for Aspen Ridge, 48 inches with drifts over 15 feet.
48 inches. And the snowmelt is offline. This will be a catastrophe.
Most residents dismissed the warning, trusting the heated driveways they had always relied on. By midnight, the snow was falling sideways at 3 inches per hay-hour.
And so it begins. Let us see how they like their aesthetic compliance now.
Inside the mechanical shed, the geothermal loop's pressure gauge flatlined. The snow began piling up on the driveways, concrete turning to ice within the hour. The stone entrance sign, reading Aspen Ridge, began to disappear under the drifts. The storm cell centered directly over Aspen Ridge, with no relief in sight for the next 48 hours. By dawn, every driveway in Aspen Ridge was a solid glacier, impossible to navigate. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood beside her, iced-over sedan, phone pressed to her ear, her breath visible.
I can't get to the hospital. I've got 2 critical patients and no way to reach them.
The school bus, loaded with 23 children, hit a drift and stopped dead 6 miles from the nearest plow. For 6 hours, the children waited in the cold, parents frantic and unable to get through. A UPS truck slid sideways at an intersection, its wheels spinning uselessly on the ice. The driver radioed dispatch. Routes canceled. Entire neighborhood inaccessible. 11 vehicles were entombed in solid ice, their doors sealed shut windows opaque with frost. An ambulance, lights flashing, was stuck at the ER entrance, paramedics trying to rock it free. Neighbors tried snowblowers on the frozen walkways, but the ice was too thick to break. Deborah Plimpton stood in her driveway, ice caked to the hem of her fuchsia coat, staring at her sedan entombed in a solid block.
This was never supposed to happen. The driveways always melted before.
At 10 a.m., the HOA board scrambled into an emergency meeting, phones ringing with helpless complaints.
We have 11 reports of car entrapment, a stranded school bus, and 0 emergency access. Someone explain how this happened.
The preliminary liability exposure is over $3 million. Medical, school delays, property damage.
This is about the unprecedented storm, not a single wellhead.
The wellhead you insisted was an eyesore? The one Donald Haugen warned would freeze the entire community if capped.
Deborah's face drained of color as the room fell silent.
Until we get that system restored, this board bears full liability. Find Haugen. Now.
Deborah sat motionless, staring at the frozen streets through the window, her world collapsing like the ice outside. Donald Haugen arrived at the boardroom, carrying a worn leather briefcase, his expression unreadable.
You wanted to see me. I assumed it was about the wellhead.
We need that system restored immediately. What will it take?
Donald opened the briefcase and laid the 25-year service contract on the table. His finger traced a highlighted clause. Force majeure exclusion for unauthorized cap. Restoration at emergency premium rate.
The contract is clear. Since you capped it without authorization, the restoration is at HOA sole cost under emergency rates.
Emergency rates? How much are we talking?
Donald slid a single sheet across the table. The itemized estimate bottom line was $1.9 million.
1.9 million. And I require permanent zoning exemption and a fenced industrial enclosure, non-negotiable.
The room fell into stunned silence as the board processed the figure.
This is pure extortion. 1.9 million and a permanent zoning exemption? The board will never agree.
You agreed to the contract 25 years ago. The clause is ironclad. No restoration, no heat.
We'd have to impose a special assessment of over $22,000 per household. People will sue us.
The snow is still falling. Every hour we delay, the damage gets worse. We have to vote now.
Outside, a recall petition against Deborah Plimpton gathered signatures faster than the snow accumulated.
They can't recall me for enforcing community standards. This is a witch hunt.
My terms are non-negotiable. Accept them, or I leave, and you deal with the ice on your own.
We have no choice. All in favor of accepting Mr. Haugen's restoration proposal. Raise your hand.
Hands went up around the table, one by one, until only Deborah's remained down. The board was cornered, and Donald Haugen watched with the patience of a man who had already won. The vote was 5-0. Deborah's hand had never risen.
Mobilize the crew. We break ground by noon. Triple overtime. I want this loop back online in 48 hours.
Within the hour, heavy equipment rumbled through the blizzard toward the capped wellhead. An excavator tore into the frozen ground, exposing the sealed loop while snow whipped sideways. A mobile crane lifted the new stainless steel wellhead casing, twice the size of the original, into position. Welders in ice-crusted masks fused the triple-insulated loops, sparks sizzling as they struck the frozen steel.
Run the loop test before we encase it. I want 0 leaks at full pressure.
By dusk, the new wellhead loomed over the site, its fenced enclosure already half erected.
Let them stare at this industrial monster. They earned it.
The system remained silent, awaiting the final pressure test, but the heart of Aspen Ridge was already rebuilt. At dawn, Donald gave the order to pressurize the loop. The new wellhead rumbled to life, steam venting into the frigid air.
Open the valves. Let us see if they can afford to complain about aesthetics now.
Within the hour, the first driveways began to thaw. Dark asphalt emerged from under the ice like a wound healing. By midday, Every heated surface in Aspen Ridge was clear. Residents stepped outside, disbelieving. That afternoon, the County Planning Board convened an emergency session and signed the permanent zoning exemption Donald demanded.
This is not a victory. It is a guarantee. Nobody touches this wellhead again.
A ceremonial exchange followed. The HOA board presented Donald with the first installment check, his expression unmoved. The county awarded him a plaque for geothermal innovation, though everyone in the room knew the real story. The new enclosure stood twice the size of the old one, its fence crowned with "no aesthetic restrictions" signage. And inside the HOA's own legal files, a freshly notarized amendment declared all utility infrastructure permanently exempt from aesthetic regulation. The recall petition against Deborah Plimpton gathered enough signatures to force a special election. The board certified the recall, and Deborah was ordered to vacate her position immediately. She loaded a U-Haul the next morning, her driveway now perfectly clear thanks to the system she had tried to destroy. That weekend, Aspen Ridge held a winter festival on the thawed streets, children skating where ice had trapped them. Residents approached Donald one by one, offering thanks. He accepted with a nod, and no gloating.
The system works. That is all that ever mattered to me.
The new wellhead stood as a permanent monument to the cost of valuing aesthetics over function. Every household received the special assessment, but no one disputed the cost after living through the blizzard. Deborah Plimpton's name was scrubbed from every HOA record, her legacy reduced to a warning about hubris. And Donald Haugen sat on his porch, watching the snow fall and melt before it touched the ground. A year later, the snow returned, but the driveways remained bone dry. He never lifted a shovel, never paid for a plow. The loop did his work for him. The geothermal loop hummed beneath the frost, invisible and unstoppable. His state license was reissued with a master designation, silent acknowledgement of his expertise. He sat on the same porch, coffee steaming, watching the neighborhood's heated paths glow in the dusk.
They learned. That's enough.
The blizzard's silver lining, no one would ever forget. The wellhead, twice the size, twice the security, stood as silent proof. Donald Haugen never plowed his own driveway again. That was the story of how an HOA capped a geothermal well and froze their whole community, and how one man made sure it never happened again. And if you ask the residents of Aspen Ridge about the blizzard of '23, they will point not to the snow, but to the wellhead. They will tell you about the man who built the system and the woman who underestimated it, how she thought it was ugly, how she had it capped, and how the whole neighborhood froze solid, how they had to pay $1.9 million to get it back, and how Donald Haugen never said, "I told you so." He never needed to. The new wellhead says it for him, every time a snowflake hits the pavement and disappears.
Ugly. She kept saying ugly. Now look at it.
The wellhead stands twice the size, fenced, bright, and absolutely permanent. Aspen Ridge learned the hard way that winter doesn't care about curb appeal. And somewhere, a retired engineer sips his coffee, knowing his driveway will never freeze again. That is the whole story. But the story he never told was the one that kept him awake the night after the vote. Minutes after the board raised their hands, he stepped outside and made a call no one witnessed.
It's done. They accepted the terms, 1.9 in the exemption, but now I can't sleep. I could have restored it at cost and walked away the hero. Instead, I made them pay with blood from stone.
He could have forgiven Deborah. He could have shown grace. But in that moment, he chose the lesson.
She called it ugly. She'll never forget the word.
His own conscience was the price. He knew the families would suffer an extra day, an extra dollar.
1.9 million is the price of remembering who built this place. They won't forget again.
He hung up, but the weight stayed. He never told anyone about that call. Decades later, on his porch, he still thought about the choice between being right and being kind. But before the restoration crew even broke ground, there was one last attempt to make him back down.
Hogan, Wait, you can't do this. 22,000 per household. Some of these people will lose everything.
They should have thought of that before they let you cap the wellhead. I warned them.
I'll pay it. 500,000 from my own accounts. Just reduce the assessment, make it fair.
For a moment, Donald's face softened, the engineer in him calculating, the man in him wavering.
Number. If I take your money, they learn nothing. The price stays.
You are as cold as the ice you are going to melt. One day, you'll regret this.
I already do, but I'd regret it more if I let them forget.
He pulled away, leaving her ankle deep in the drift, the recall petition already circulating. That was the last time she ever spoke to him. The moment he became the man in the story, the one who never bent. The next morning, a handwritten letter arrived at his office. The paper crinkled and blotted. Mr. Haugen, my husband drove the school bus that froze. The assessment means we can't afford our home. Please reduce it. Our children already suffered enough.
It shouldn't be them. Deborah should be paying, not the families.
He placed the letter beside his contract and sat motionless, the numbers running cold in his head.
I could cover a few families in secret. It wouldn't change the public lesson.
But then his gaze drifted to the wellhead diagram, the decades of service, the arrogance of one woman.
If I start now, where does it end? The board must feel the full cost. The families will understand someday.
He wrote a personal check for that one family, left it unsigned in the file. He never mailed it. That night, he drove past the bus driver's house. Lights were on, a for sale sign already in the yard. He never told anyone about the check or the sign. It stayed with him, like the snow, long after the ice melted. 3 nights later, he pulled his truck to the curb outside the same for sale house. In his hand, a sealed envelope with the unsigned check, now signed, and a note that read only for the children.
This changes nothing about the lesson, but it changes everything about who I am.
He stepped out, walked silently to the mailbox, and placed the envelope inside, raising the red flag. Then he drove away, headlights cutting the dark, leaving no name, no trace. That single act, secret and costly, became his real price. Not the 1.9 million, but this. 18 years later, he would still wonder if the bus driver ever noticed the flag was up.
They never spoke of the envelope, but by spring, the for sale sign was gone.
The wellhead had become a monument. But the mailbox flag, raised in the dark, was his own. He never told this story, even on his porch. It was the one chapter he kept for himself. 20 years later, a letter arrived at Donald Haugen's cabin, the envelope unmarked but for his name. Dear Mr. Haugen, I was one of the children on that bus. My parents never forgot the anonymous envelope that saved our home. I became an engineer because of you. Inside was a photograph. A young woman, a child on her hip, standing beside a geothermal wellhead, identical to his.
She built her own. The loop kept more than driveways warm.
He folded the letter with the same care he had used to sign the check 2 decades before. That evening, he walked to the wellhead and placed the photograph inside the enclosure, beside the pressure gauge. Now, every reading of the meter would show not just pressure, but proof that one small act can echo. He sat on his porch until dark, the letter in his lap, a peace he had never fully allowed himself settling over him.
Maybe being right and being kind weren't so far apart after all.
And the snow continued to fall, and the driveway remained clear. The story was finally whole. 5 years after the blizzard, the county installed a bronze plaque beside the wellhead enclosure, Aspen Ridge Geothermal Loop, proof that function is the truest beauty. Let no cosmetic concern compromise what keeps a community alive. School groups began touring the site, and Donald occasionally spoke, his voice still deliberate, still carrying the weight of the lesson. Deborah Plimpton, now living in a cramped condo 3 towns over, turned off her television the moment his face appeared, but the plaque remained, a permanent factual record that no amount of remote clicks could erase. Every winter, the Aspen Ridge Community Festival now ended at the wellhead, where residents lit lanterns to thank the engineer who never let them forget. The HOA's amended covenant, Section 12, Paragraph 4, was framed in the community center, never to be violated again. Donald visited the frame once a year, never saying anything, just nodding at his own signature on the original contract when the State Geothermal Board honored him with its Lifetime's Achievement Award. He used his speech to thank the bus driver's family, anonymously. Till the end, the wellhead pumped warmth beneath the snow, and the plaque read true. 40 winters passed, and Donald Haugen still sat on his porch each evening, watching the flurries vanish on his driveway.
84 homes, 84 driveways, and not a single freeze since the restoration. The loop outlasted all the shouting.
The community had long since stopped seeing the enclosure as ugly. It was simply the reason their children could walk to school in winter. On his 91st birthday, the HOA board sent a card signed by every household, thanking him for the lesson they never forgot. That same week, a second bronze plaque appeared beside the first, placed by the children who had been on the bus. He melted the ice, and in doing so, he melted us. His master geothermal license, framed, hung in the county building, a silent requirement for every new engineer to see. Donald passed quietly the following spring, but the loop never noticed. It simply kept pumping. The enclosure, twice the size, fenced and bright, stands to this day, a monument not to revenge, but to the cost of forgetting. And somewhere in Aspen Ridge, every time a snowflake touches asphalt and disappears, the story is told again. Today, the wellhead still pumps, unseen, unheard, but felt in every dry driveway. 2 plaques stand side by side on a stone pedestal, the county's proclamation and the children's gratitude. Inside the community center, the framed covenant still hangs, its ink unblemished by time or challenge. The rocking chair on Donald's porch sits empty, but the driveway before it remains defiantly clear. Children walk to school on sidewalks that never freeze, too young to remember the blizzard that taught their grandparents. In the county building, his master license hangs silently, a requirement for every new engineer to see before they sign their first permit. Every winter festival, lanterns flicker at the wellhead's fence, a tradition born from catastrophe and kept by gratitude. From above, Aspen Ridge looks like any other wealthy enclave, except for the massive fenced structure at its heart. The story is no longer about one man or one woman. It is a permanent piece of the ground, and each winter, when the first flake falls, Aspen Ridge remembers not with a word, but with a warm, dry path. The years have softened the fence, rust tinging the chain link, but the steam still rises true. The rocking chair on Donald's porch remains, a memorial no one planned but everyone protects. Children pass it on their way to school, some too young to know the name, but all know the warmth. The plaques have outlasted 3 HOA boards, but the covenant holds, untouchable, unamended. In the county building, new engineers pause before the master license, some out of requirement, most out of reverence. From above, Aspen Ridge is unremarkable, but for the fenced heart that beats underground, the pressure gauge still reads full. The loop has never once faltered, and the mailbox flag, where he left his secret, stands forever raised, a silent monument to the one kind act no one saw. Winter still comes. The snow still falls, but in Aspen Ridge, it never stays. That is the whole story. The ugly wellhead became the lesson, the ice became the teacher, and Donald Haugen never plowed his own driveway again.